So the trap of understanding, and sort of like an exploration into why figuring it out isn't always the best answer, which was something that Scott and I talked about a lot last week. And it was his main sort of like through line on what he was saying was just like figuring it out creates resistance. And that's kind of, obviously my brain works pretty fast. I like thinking about things deeply, analyzing things, blah, 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 blah. So figuring it out's kind of been my default mode for a long time. So getting into a place where I'm not trying to figure things out is definitely a challenge.
I just thought that that was the central theme of Frozen was just to let it go, let it go,
Yeah,
and
kind
not
of.
and and not have to worry too much about yeah, that you can't force the process. You just have to let things unfold in their natural time, their natural rhythm, and they may or may not actually be to your liking, but that they will be as they are meant to be. So
Yeah, you can plan, you can prepare, but you can't plan and prepare for everything. And planning and preparing is great, but sometimes it's used as an like sort of just a way to proxy for control in your life. Because if you can plan things out and optimize things and track things and whatever, then you can feel like you have control over stuff, even when in reality you don't. Um,
yeah, yeah,
it's definitely been a hard shift for me.
it's I would say that yeah, there's this illusion of control is one that affects a lot of us, and that we it I wouldn't say it's harmful, but it can definitely get in the way of of further wisdom and further understanding of how things it can get in the way for sure. Yeah, I would say.
Yeah, like a lot of problems can be solved by just doing more, pushing harder on the gas, put in more reps, put in more hours, blah, blah, blah. But the issue is that when you face a problem that can't be solved that way, you don't know what to do with it because you're so used to being able to just squeeze more. And this is, I think I delineated between the difference between efforts and outcomes, which
Hmm.
is you can always put more effort into something that's an effort challenge. But if something is an outcome challenge and you're trying to control the outcome, you can't ever fully control the outcome. You can sway it to some degree based on your effort, but there's always some amount of force that is just going to be wasted when you're trying to control outcomes.
It's funny you should mention that because you used a few times as you scattered it throughout your article, you used going for this walk with this girl who you had an interest in
Mm-hmm.
to try to see if there was a potential there. But then when you said in terms of like trying to force outcome, you can put your effort in, but you can't. Ultimately, you can't control the outcome. The first thing that popped in my mind when you said that just half a minute ago was my last relationship as well, which is that I felt like I put effort in so many different ways, and ultimately I can't. I'm only half of the equation, so I can't control the outcome. So,
Yeah,
and ultimately I didn't control the outcome. So
you can't
I
control
just
the outcome,
had to accept things.
and you can't control other people,
Right.
even if you feel like you feel like you know what's best, or you're doing it from a place of love or whatever. It's really hard to accept. I think the two quotes that just popped into my mind: Neil Strauss, "People rarely change, and when they do change, it's never when you want them to, and because you said so," or something like that.
Or for
I'm
the reason that you want
I'm
them to, yeah.
roughly paraphrasing there, but it's
Hmm.
along those lines. And the other quote is from Joe Hudson, who says, "If you're trying to change somebody, you're not loving them." And that applies to yourself as well. If you're trying to change yourself, you're also not loving yourself.
Yeah, but I need change. I need to make changes in my life though. So, And I would say that actually that is, I wouldn't say self love. It's just recognition of
Your own shortcomings, or
areas where I could use improvement. So it's not
it's fair, but you're still not loving yourself fully as you currently are. Like you're still admitting, like it can be from a, it's not from, doesn't necessarily have to come from a place of like self hatred, but like if you want to change something about yourself, then you are by definition admitting there's something you don't like about yourself. So
exactly.
yeah. Anyways, my overall just initial question to get things started has just been figuring it out. I know for me has been like it's just my natural tendency and just the way my brain works. I'm a very like analytical, deep type of thinker. I like pulling things apart, optimizing, blah blah blah. And I feel like sometimes it's like two sides of the coin. Like I enjoy the way my brain works, and I appreciate the speed of thought and complexity of delving into ideas it gives me. But also, you can't really turn it off. And sometimes when it grabs onto the wrong thing, it's just destructive in certain scenarios in terms of rumination or thought loops about things or whatever. And I'm just curious how the thesis of not trying to figure it out landed with you, because I feel like we're pretty similar in the fact that we both are this type of, you know, analytical, always trying to figure it out type of brain. Like I feel like I probably get that from you. I'm not entirely certain, but
I thought it was interesting the way you phrased it, that you enjoy the way your brain works. Um, and that some people might take that as being conceited, but that's not the way I interpreted it. It's, I think most people don't really put much thought into the way their brain works, I guess, in the sense that they don't actually analyze themselves or about the way that they think or about their shortcomings or what their strengths are, and also just the way that they think and how they come to the thoughts that they have, basically. So
mm-hmm.
I thought it was an interesting little preamble basically there. So but yeah, in general, it's a really interesting meta-analysis about our own shortcomings, about the fact that I mean, really, we can't know. I mean, in some ways, it was sort of your article was a bit of a continuance of this. Last couple articles were about um, spirituality and about the unknown and embracing the unknown and this kind of thing. And this was sort of carried on with that in a more general sense, I guess, about not
Yeah, kind of.
you can't know the outcome. You about embracing the uncertainty of the outcome. You have to just sort of live with the void, basically, right? Live with the uncertainty that you might be feeling right now. So I found that found that very kind of thought provoking. So, but yes, we both do have an analytical kind of way. We like to be able to try and find an answer. In math, there is an answer. Like
Mm-hmm.
there is no sort of gray area. There's the logical truth, and which is great. I mean, I love that about math. I love that about some aspects of science, but that doesn't often
Yeah,
apply to the real world, and so therefore we have to embrace the embrace the uncertainty and embrace not being able to force the outcome, as you said. So
yeah. It has sort of been a continuation of like where I've been writing about, because I don't know, just sort of towards the start of this year, I've started incorporating, uh, instead of just writing about ideas and writing about concepts and writing about lessons and stuff, I've tried to focus on sort of merging the intellectual, philosophical, conceptual side of things with my own personal experiences, excerpts from my journal, actual like things that I've been actually going through in my life. And that sort of like synergy I've really been enjoying in terms of writing, because it allows me to connect with it deeper and I feel like my writing has become stronger because of it. But also, it's sort of creating like a story arc between issues as well, because it's
Mm-hmm.
like each issue is kind of building on the last a little more than it has previously. Like I would say over the last year, certain ideas definitely pop up again and again, and I revisit certain ideas in different perspectives or different frameworks or whatever, or I'll even revisit the same idea just like in a different way. But now it's not quite linear, but it's each issue definitely connects to the last in a bit more of a real way, because it is more deeply connected to where I'm actually experiencing things, what I'm actually going through in my life, and I'm enjoying that. I don't know, that just the different approach to writing that has sort of just, I didn't really consciously do it. It's just sort of happened uh, into this new year.
Hmm. So, I mean, one thought I had as I was going through was, I mean, it was pretty conceptual, I guess I would say. You did use the example of coming to understand the potential relationship with this girl, the girl you called her
Hmm.
on the walk. Somebody who you have interested in, and that ultimately you both decided that maybe um, staying as friends might be the best option. I think is what you said, but or well, at least for now. I mean, just anyways.
Yeah.
Hope she's not. Hopefully, if I'm inaccurately depicting that, I hope she's not listening to this right now. Uh,
Maybe.
but what I was thinking about was, were there other sort of like real life examples of being able to sort of find peace and just be present in the here and now and embracing the uncertainty. Basically, that's what came to mind as I was reading it. I mean, it was very it's very, like I say, it was very, I wouldn't say theoretical, but yeah. Um, I can certainly
Wasn't
understand
super
what you're,
concrete.
certainly understand what you're saying. Yeah, but it was a little more abstract. But I was curious about if there's some other real life examples. I mean, obviously, you're at an age in life right now where you are at multiple pivot points, I guess, of uncertainty in terms of career choice, in terms of romantic partners, in terms of where you ultimately end up living, in terms of
Hmm.
all sorts of things. So there's there's a lot of uncertainty around all that, and yeah, you can't know everything, and also and even I mean you're obviously further along than most, I'd say, but you're still figuring yourself out too in terms of who you are and what matters to you and what do you value and what are your concrete what are your absolutes? I mean, what
Hmm.
are the things that will not permit and what are you more flexible on and what do you value in relationships? Like there's all sorts of all kinds of these things that you're sort of that are that are in various stages of define and undefinedness, I
Yeah.
guess I would say.
Yeah. I mean, when I was writing the issue, that example of the walk with the girl just came up because it was a more recent thing.
Yeah.
It was on my mind and it connected well with the topic. But yeah, there's definitely like this idea of sitting with the uncertainty has come up in my newsletter a few times throughout the year, but it hasn't really like ingrained as fully as it has now for me, because I don't know, before it was just sort of like it would be something I would tell myself to feel better, or it would be something in certain situations where I'm like, sometimes I just can't know the answer, whatever. But this was sort of like a broader realization slash approach where it's like, oh, like all of life is just going to be like this most of the time. There are some things in my control, but so much of it is out of my control that just letting things happen as they will is going to be much more enjoyable and peaceful for me right now than trying to fight the current of the way things are flowing.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's a lot And then that way I can actually put more focus on the things that I actually can control and actually do want to focus on, like optimizing or squeezing effort into or whatever. And I can actually show up even stronger. Like, it's just fully ingrained more, basically, is the thing. Because, like, this is not new. This is like the Stoic 101, focus on what you can control, don't worry about what you can't control. It's the same thing with like Buddhist philosophy. It's like, there's the flow chart of things, and it's like, do you have a problem? Yes or no. Is it in your control? Yes. Can you deal with it? Yes. Then you have nothing to worry about. Is it out of your control? Then yes. Okay, then you have nothing to worry about because you're not going
Mm.
to change the outcome anyways. Like, these are ideas that I've known about for such a long time, but I don't know, it's ingrained so much more for me at this moment, probably because of it aligned with personal experience, but it also aligned with other ideas that I've been talking about over the past months, like gratitude, spiritual curiosity, being more present and aware of myself and others, being more emotionally vulnerable and open. Like, they all sort of like form this intersection where it's like my tendency to overanalyze and want to know the answer for everything is great. But I can be okay with the fact that I don't need to know the answer to everything. Sometimes there isn't an answer. Sometimes there isn't an answer I can even know. And being not just accepting that, but just being totally okay with that being the norm for tons of areas of life. And yeah, the emotional vulnerability thing ties into it a lot as well because, like, the figuring it out thing, the main issue of like resistance that you push up against when you're trying to figure things out is emotions and vulnerability and like internal stuff because you can't really figure out emotions. Like, you can sit with them and sort of feel how you're feeling with them and stuff, but like, if you tried to like map out and describe every emotion you've ever had, it's not like, we have these labels like angry, happy, sad, joy, whatever, that sort of like group together certain feelings that people are familiar with. But like, you can feel an entire myriad of different combinations of all of those at the same time in ways that are completely novel at different points in times depending on what's happening and whatever. So I don't know if spectrum is the right word, but the like emotions are just like so broad and amorphous that when you're trying to figure them out, it's just generally just doesn't go well, and it creates a lot of internal tension and internal struggle.
Yeah, I mean, because every your emotions are also contextual. They're not set in stone. They're based on a time and a place, and like I say, a context. Um, uh, and they morph over time. And yes, you can have a range of emotions, and that range can at any one time, and that range can change over time as well.
Conflicting
It's
emotions, even like second and third order emotions, where you're like, you feel something and then you feel something about the way you were feeling that thing. Like, and you
mhm.
feel another, like, oh, I'm ashamed that I felt that way. And then I'm like curious as to why I'm ashamed that I felt that way and blah, 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 blah. It's like an infinite regress sometimes.
This is an interesting exploration because typically men historically have not been invited to consider their emotions, let alone express their emotions.
Hmm.
So that's, I mean, maybe that's changing now. So, and probably for the best.
Yeah, I mean, there's this idea of emotional control that gets sort of tainted on Stoic philosophy a lot of the time, where it's, talking about how you need to be unaffected by the things that happen in the world, and you need to be strong as a rock, and you need to, like, even like when people think of the word Stoic, not relating to philosophy, like they think
Mm-hmm.
of a Stoic person as someone who's calm and cold and emotionless and stuff.
Keep calm, carry on.
Yeah, but that's not what it's about. It's not about like suppressing your emotions and trying to like cage them and bottle them. It's about like letting them be there without, like, as I was talking about with the in the vulnerability podcast we did like a couple of weeks ago now,
Mm-hmm.
you're not fighting your emotions. You're not so unaware of them to the point where they completely control you, but you're aware of them, but you just like you sort of coexist within yourself, if that makes any sense. So
Yep.
it's like there's no you're trying to reduce as much friction between you and your emotions as possible. And the way to actually do that is to express them, feel them, sit with them, try not to avoid them, resist them, or uh, neglect them or anything, or hide from them, or like that's all the ideas that keep popping up in like my videos and my newsletters about welcoming your emotions and sitting with your emotions. That's what that is. You're just trying to avoid, not avoid, you're trying to reduce this internal friction and internal tension that so many of us are so used to. And that's a lot of what figuring it out is when you're trying to figure it out, when you're trying to control things, you're trying to understand, why is this happening? Why am I feeling this way? Why? Instead, what you need to do is just like sit with the feeling and just let it be there.
Mm-hmm.
And then usually when you do that, clarity will arise from that sort of calm awareness of the actual experience or emotion you're going through.
That's very insightful. So tell me a bit about the golden algorithm.
Yeah, Joe Hudson's golden algorithm, I mentioned a couple times because it really ties right into this
Mm-hmm.
idea.
Yeah.
It's basically that in doing, in your avoidance of something, whatever it is, you end up creating the exact conditions to invite that thing into your life more. And this is, oh, there's another term for this exact same phenomenon. I completely forget it. It's like something regress theory, maybe, or something like that. That Freud was talking about, like in psychoanalysis stuff, like
Mm-hmm.
a long time ago. So it's not like a new idea. I'm sure, obviously, it's comes up in earlier philosophies as well. But it's basically like, if you are scared someone's going to leave you in a romantic relationship, then you will end up acting in a way where you are extra clingy or extra anxious, blah, 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 and you end up driving people away. So you end up pushing them away and you end up creating the very thing that you're afraid will happen
Mm-hmm.
because you aren't sitting with the feeling that you have inside of fear of being alone or fear of not being loved or fear of not being worthy of love or whatever. And since you aren't sitting with that, you are creating internal friction, internal tension that is controlling your behavior and therefore creating the exact thing that you don't want to happen. And that's just one example, but it happens all the time. And as soon as you start to think about it as a phenomenon that, like as a natural byproduct of internal avoidance or internal resistance, you see it everywhere. And it's kind of crazy how easily it just maps onto whenever someone is having like some sort of issue or problem. You can just be like, oh, well, that's because they're scared of this, and then they're just creating that thing in their life. They're not like, manifesting it into existence or whatever. They're
Mm-hmm.
just basically, their avoidance, as I was saying, is creating the conditions for that thing to happen to them.
Yeah, we do have a tendency just to naturally want to. I mean, it's entirely Darwinian to want to avoid the things that cause anguish, cause pain, cause discomfort of some sort, cause fear or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I see that all the time in my work, right? So even if it's not
Yeah.
the most rational, so but yeah, no, that makes sense to me.
Yeah, so that's basically what it was. And it ties into this idea of figuring things out is basically when you try to figure things out and you're trying to get to the truth, what you're ending up doing is actually creating more confusion and more misunderstanding in yourself because you are trying to control outcomes you can't control, which ends up driving up your own internal anxiety, avoidance, overthinking, overanalysis, blah blah blah. And that's sort of how those two ideas like connected a little bit. But Yeah, so that's what that was about.
Makes sense.
I'm curious if there's a time that you can think of where you might have been accidentally falling into the so-called golden algorithm, where like you were trying to make something happen, or maybe you're avoiding something, and now looking back, you realize maybe you were actually creating the very thing that you didn't want to happen, or creating the conditions for the thing that you didn't want to happen, or maybe like inviting the possibility for that to happen into your life, and then sort
Oh,
of, it's not like self-destructive, but it's sort of like there's a better word for it, but it's basically like self-sabotaging almost in a way, but you don't
mm-hmm.
even realize you're doing it basically.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. There's definitely been. I mean, I'm old, so there's probably been lots of times where that's been the case. I can think of that with relationships. I can think of that with work, for sure. Um, and I can think of that. Those are the two most obvious examples to come up with, relationships and work. But yeah, I mean, it does tend to happen. I mean, I can think of, I know of somebody who she really wants to be in a relationship, and she's in her mid 30s. She would like to have kids, but you mentioned that earlier. I mean, like she's extra clingy with guys that she meets because she really, really, really wants that to happen, and she ends up pushing them away, sadly. So, even though
Mm,
she's otherwise a catch. So,
yeah, it's hard to see that happen because you want to help people, but trying to fix them or trying to help them even from a place of love doesn't usually work because again you're trying to change them.
mm-hmm.
um, and I find something I've just been doing more recently is just being there when someone is working through something, or like trying to figure out what they think about something, or they're like, they're having maybe some sort of problem or issue or distress over something. If you just sit there and actually like don't try to involve yourself at all, you just listen to them, and then whenever they express things, you don't try to figure out why they're expressed, like but you like probe them to sort of think about their own emotions or think about where their own things are coming from. So if someone's like, oh, I'm really um all these guys keep leaving me because I'm too antsy to have kids or whatever, and then you're like, I don't know, you could ask them, why do you want to have kids so much? And then they would say, oh, blah, blah, blah. I want to have a family, blah, blah, blah. And then they might sort of reveal, I don't want to be alone. See, there's the fear that's underneath this desire
Mm-hmm.
to have a family, have children, blah, blah, blah. So you say, okay. And then they might express that, and they're saying, I my worst case scenario would be like, being 40 or 50 without kids and I can't have kids anymore, whatever. And you say, okay, where do you think that fear is coming from? Or you just let them sort of express their way through feeling that fear and sort of not figuring it out, but like through sitting with it. The expression of emotions usually leads to clarity. So you'll find that when you sort of do this thing where you sit and just let people express themselves, and then you just barely like probe them to self-reflect or self-analyze or self-regulate and sit with their emotions, they'll just kind of like solve their own problems. It's kind of crazy. Like I've been doing this a little like more and more recently, and like people come to me and they'll like talk about stuff, and I'll literally just sit there barely listening to them, just letting them express. Like I'll still be listening to them,
Mm-hmm.
but like I'm not listening to them with the intent of like, how can I help them? How can I help whatever? And the funny thing is that not trying to help them and just sitting there and letting them express all their emotions helps them way more than trying to help them, because they end up expressing whatever issue they had internally and then realizing whatever they needed to realize, and then through that expression comes the clarity, and then they're like, oh, thank you so much, and you're like, didn't really do anything, you're
Mm-hmm.
welcome.
Yeah, I mean, I've noticed that myself with, when I have like a lot to do, like a lot on my plate, a very large to-do list, and it can be overwhelming, completely overwhelming. And then the easiest thing at that point is to just turtle and avoid it, because you think
Hmm.
about this big mountain of responsibility and the anxiety it causes you. And so then the best way to avoid that anxiety is to ignore it and do something, and yet all that ends up doing is actually making the problem worse. So
Hmm.
um, but it's one of those things where the solution to your problem is actually embedded right in there, in terms of the description of the problem, or a manifestation of the problem, which is that
Yeah.
you can't just ignore it, and you've got to actually put in the work and do it.
Yeah. Emotions have this funny way of not going away. Like if you have some sort of emotion or fear or internal whatever it is, some feeling that you don't want to sit with, it's uncomfortable, it's scary, doesn't make you feel good, whatever, and you try and avoid it, ignore it, do something else, think you're overanalyze your way through it, whatever, it finds a way to always come back somehow, which is very curious how it always like resurfaces in some sort of way. Like in the extreme, I was just listening to Andrew Huberman in Modern Wisdom, and he's talking about how some people can literally overwork themselves to the point where they are developing like these weird cysts and bruises and like abnormalities on their skin, and they're like go to the doctor and they're like super worried about it. It's like, oh, it's because you're like pushing yourself so intensely hard, which is probably due to some root avoidance of an emotion or whatever, that you're like, your body is just like finding a way to like release it, which is
Hmm.
insane. And it's just like this internal avoidance. The reason that you need to sit with the uncomfortable emotions and sit with the uncertainty and feel your feelings and take them seriously is because there isn't really another option. You can push it off as much as you want, but it's just like paying your minimum credit card bill every month and not worrying about it. Like the
Mm-hmm.
interest piles up over time. And I don't know, just yeah, emotions have this funny way of working like that. Like you can't truly stop an emotion from coming and you can't stop it from wanting to be felt. And if you keep pushing it down forever and forever and forever, eventually it might get to the point where you just like totally break down and have like some sort of complete like it'll be extremely cathartic, but you'll have some sort of like complete emotional breakdown, some sort of, you're in tears for like days on end or something, like if you've been really avoiding something within yourself for that long. And it's curious how emotions work like that you can't avoid them no matter what you try and do.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's one thing we've always known, is bottling up emotions is never going to work. But yeah, just I was when you was I was thinking of a more real life example of trying to control a situation and trying to push a resolution. Like with my own work, for example, I've got a couple of people that work with me that they each have their strengths and they each have their weaknesses, and they each know the other person's strengths and the other person's weaknesses, and
Mm-hmm.
um, it's going to be difficult to get them to realize that, I guess.
Realize what?
Realize that uh, they focus on the other person's weaknesses rather than the other person's strengths.
Oh
I would
yeah,
say, but I've got a opportunity. I guess you might say that. I'm not sure if that's the right word, opportunity, but effectively one of them is going away on holidays for most of March, and so the other one's going to have to pick up the slack for the other one that's off for most of the month, and so that's the opportunity,
they
which
might realize the strengths they're
is
missing
that
out on.
when everything now falls upon the one who's not on holidays, it's the strengths of the other one who's away is going to become more obvious. But I realized that I can talk till I'm blue in the face about to both of them about this, but it's only going to come naturally. I wasn't planning this, but it's only going to come naturally, next month when this happens on its own time and at its own speed.
Yeah. Or you could, I mean, yeah, that's one way to do it. Or you could also, you could just ask them with total curiosity, not coming from a place of trying to fix anything. Just ask them where this fixation on each other's weaknesses comes from, and just be curious about why they have an issue with it, or why it's something that they tend to fixate on. Like maybe it's you know you wouldn't say this because it's you're injecting into trying to fix the problem. You're like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's the fact that their weaknesses are something they don't like in themselves, or could be a myriad of reasons. But um, yeah, just usually the more I've been doing it recently, it's just like leading with curiosity and not trying to come from a place of expecting anything to happen or trying to make anything happen tends to just like kind of work out a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I mean, they what in this specific example, that's the two of them have very different working styles.
Yeah,
One is extremely efficient, but she makes more mistakes, and one is extremely slow, but she makes
very
less mistakes
organized.
because she's
Yeah,
very organized and methodical. But the volume of work is less, but the volume of
quality
but the volume
or the
of errors is also less too. So there's two different
yeah.
approaches that can come about. So um, yeah, you're right. I mean, if I ask probing questions without
Like an impetus for resolution.
an end goal
Yeah,
in mind, that's basically ask leading questions. In another word, um, then yeah, perhaps I'll uncover some underlying fears that maybe are in place there
yeah.
about that they have. So that's quite possible.
And that's all lovely in theory, but it's really difficult to like have that level of detachment. You're truly not trying to like get to a solution. You're truly not trying to help them out. You're also trying not to judge or create any like feeling of judgment from your questions, because it's very easy to do that, like trying to come in with curiosity and then your questions end up sounding like you're judging them for whatever they're doing,
Mm-hmm.
and that doesn't work because then it seems like you're trying to fix them or change them or whatever.
And then they become defensive, and then
Then they get
the person
defensive
become
and then it
defensive, of
turns into an
course,
argument or whatever. Yeah.
naturally unfolds that way.
So it's definitely difficult. And this is sort of how it all ties into other recent lessons I've been talking about with awareness, mindfulness, blah, 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 is that those things help create your ability to sort of cultivate this level of detachment. Because if you aren't extremely self reflective, self aware, and like grounding yourself in the present by not distracting yourself and not constantly avoiding silence, and you're actually, you sit in that silence a lot, you sit with yourself a lot through, meditation or quiet walks or whatever it is, it like creates this space that allows you to create this level of detachment in social scenarios that is so difficult to do for most people, because most people
Do
in the
none of those
busy
things.
modern world are, they wake up, they're immediately on their phone, they're scrolling while they brush their teeth, and then they're watching a YouTube video while they eat breakfast, and then they're listening to a podcast or music while they're on their way to work. And then when they're at work, they're just doing stuff, they're doing their work, whatever. When they're on break, they're watching a YouTube video or they're scrolling while they eat their food or whatever. People bring their phones to the bathroom and they're scrolling while they're on the toilet or they're playing Wordle or whatever. Like, there's never a time of silence for your brain to sit and just think, sit with feelings, mull things over. Like, those moments are so vitally important, and they're so criminally underappreciated and under like leveraged in today's society. Like, so many people just think, whatever. Like, I can listen to music because it's relaxing for me, or I'm going to listen to a podcast because I'm learning something and it's entertaining. Like, those things are true. I love music. I love podcasts, but you have to sort of deliberately choose certain times where you're just not going to do it. Like, I love listening to podcasts while I'm on the bus or I'm on a walk, or especially like on a walk, I can really absorb everything they're saying or whatever, or maybe I'm doing chores. But at least half the time now, maybe more, I will deliberately not use my headphones, not do anything, and just sort of sit there, think about stuff, maybe not think about stuff, look around. I'm on the bus, I can like see what people are up to, just sort of like quietly observe and be curious. And like that, sitting in the silence, I I don't even know how invaluable it is because I'm more used to it now, but I know how powerful it is. And I know the times when I wasn't doing that and my mind was so much busier than it is now. And I just have like a higher baseline clarity of thought throughout my day. And it's, yeah, ditching headphones more often, as much as I hate to admit, because I love music and I love podcasts and all that. Ditching headphones more often is a very high ROI habit or just simple thing to adopt in your day-to-day life.
I find that I can at least get part of the way there with music, because music is not so, it doesn't require your complete attention, especially if you already know the songs. But podcasts, definitely, they absorb your complete attention, and therefore you can't really focus your attention on those internal things you're talking about. But yeah, no, it's funny when you mentioned about brushing your teeth while watching YouTube and playing Wordle on the toilet and listening to podcasts. I mean, I was almost thinking, oh wow, it seems like you've got a camera following me around, because that's exactly my life. So which
Yeah,
does which is not, yeah, it doesn't leave a lot of time for introspection, of course, right? So or even being aware of kind of how you're feeling, because you're just kind of going through life and there's so much to absorb.
it's
So
really easy to think, oh, I don't need that.
mm-hmm.
Whereas, it's not necessary. And which is kind of true, sort of. You don't need it, but if you want the sort of peace and clarity of mind that comes with intentional awareness and mindfulness and sort of the space between thoughts and action that mindfulness gives you, that's kind of the only way, is to sit in silence in some degree or form for a not significant portion of your day, but like, at the very least, some form of daily meditation or prayer, or at least like what I would call everything I was talking about, where like, you're on the bus and you're not listening to anything, you're just
Mm-hmm.
sitting there or whatever, or you go for a walk and it's just the walk. Like, it's no headphones, no
Mm-hmm.
music, no podcast, or not even like talking with someone or whatever. It's like you're alone, you're just going for a quick 15-minute walk or whatever. I would call those like micro moments of mindfulness, where they're just like sort of these small things throughout the day where you can like practice a bit of mindfulness without it being a full on like sit there for 20 minutes meditation session.
It's funny you mentioned this, and when I thought about what would really allow some little more deeper thought. Um, I was reminded of actually of Carmona Valley actually, which is just
Right on the poster here.
and I just happened to look over here, and all of a sudden
There it was.
there it is. But that's I mean, I would never consider putting on headphones and listening to music or a podcast while I was in Carmona Valley. In fact, I would probably try to be in as much silence as possible, just to be alone with your thoughts in this amazing place. And I think, yeah, so I was thinking about, like, walks in nature are an excellent way to
Mm-hmm.
help to facilitate that. Um, help to facilitate not needing to fill that gap, because I find that, like you, my mind is always kind of looking to absorb something or to analyze something or think about something or hear some new concepts or all this kind of stuff, and then my mind wants to relate them to other things that are already bouncing around in there,
Mm-hmm.
and all that's great. But yeah, I think that I need, almost like you need time to, just like with sleep, you need like REM sleep to kind of reset your brain. It's almost like you need some of those empty moments while you're fully awake and conscious to actually
Quiet your mind
quiet your
down.
mind as well,
Yeah.
in terms of um, not having to fill it up with external stuff. I wouldn't say garbage, but stuff.
Yeah.
So I think you've given me a takeaway for this week to try to see
Yeah. Challenge. Sit with
how
some silence some more.
sit an hour or two a day where I don't have
Yeah, like spread it out
a
and start small though.
a TV. No, I didn't mean an hour or
Yeah.
two at one time. I mean like
Yeah. Yeah.
an
Yeah. I know.
hour or two throughout the whole day. In small bursts where, yeah, where there is no music on, where there's no podcast, there's no video, there's no Globe and Mail article that I'm reading. There's no, or even just something like a world game. Like no distractions basically.
Yeah. Yeah. Because the silence. Uh, all of my best thoughts have probably come in a moment of silence where I'm sitting on the bus, or I'm meditating, or I'm on a walk, or I'm laying in bed about to fall asleep. Shower thoughts, right? Like these are the moments, and everyone knows these are the moments when ideas strike. These are the moments when things connect, when you have that moment where, like, oh, yeah, that makes sense now. Because you weren't trying to figure it out, you were letting your brain mull things over, subconscious is working on it, whatever. The not trying to figure it out, ironically, allows you to figure it out. And that is what the silence gives you in these, micro moments of mindfulness, as I would call them. And I think that's why so many people are like so drawn to nature, and they're like, oh, I just love being in nature because it's so calming and peaceful and blah blah blah. Yes, like there's elements of that are inherent to the fact that it's
In
nature, and
nature, yeah. Yep.
there's fresh air, and there's sunlight, and there's greenery, and there's reasons for why nature specifically would, in like relaxing sounds of like
Mm-hmm.
birds or water or whatever. Those are valid reasons, but a large portion of the reason that going into nature is so nice is because 90% of the time you're going into nature, you're not listening to music, you're not listening to a podcast. You might be having a conversation with someone if you're on a walk or a hike or something. But if you're on a hike in, Carmona Valley, if you're going on a trip where you're like exploring, some sort of site with ruins that's in nature, or you're like, I don't know,
Hmm.
on a mountain. I mean, it's kind of hard to think of examples of being in nature that aren't just hikes. It's just varieties of
Mm-hmm.
hikes, basically. But
Boating. Yeah.
yeah, there's boating, there's tons of different things. All of those things, the nature, like you being in the nature, kind of creates presence because you're in silence, you're taking in sights, but like you're not necessarily distracting yourself with, electronics and podcasts and audio and stuff.
you're not being terribly distracted by external influences, I guess I would say. Yeah, you're able to
Like you're not
sit back and
stimulating your mind. That's
sit
probably a
back
good
and
way to say it.
yeah, exactly.
Like
Yeah.
you are, but like a very low level, like stimulation from the visual sights of nature, but you're not like you're still sitting in silence. And that's
Mm.
like the main thing is like sitting in the silence gives you that sort of just ability to quietly work over things.
Mm. Without trying to figure it out,
Yeah.
just being present at the moment. Yeah, just
And like literally just like sit in the silence in like just let whatever thoughts come up. Like don't because a lot of people, I think, meditation has become quite popular. It's more widely, there's studies on it now, linking it to various positive health outcomes and mental whatevers, and that it's a more mainstream than it was however many years ago when it was sort of seen as this mystical like whatever thing. There's like meditation apps and all this stuff. It's more broadly talked about in a lot of it's a serious thing in the same way that running was never like mainstream and then it became mainstream. Like in I don't know the 50s or 60s, if you said you were going for a run, someone probably would have asked you who are you running from, who's chasing you
mm-hmm.
or whatever. But
Mm-hmm.
now going for a run is like it's a normal thing because obviously it's duh, it's cardio and it's good for your heart and blah 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 blah. Meditation has sort of gone through the similar thing where it's like if you tell someone you meditate, they're not going to ask you like what's that for, like you just sit there and do nothing.
Yeah,
Like
right.
some people might, but it's definitely less common. But the issue with this sort of mainstream thing, because society is so obsessed with figuring things out and optimizing, and everything has it needs to be productive and it needs to have its purpose for things. A lot of people, I think, go into meditation with this sort of
Yeah,
expectation,
with
or
a preset goal in mind.
they go with a preset goal in mind, which is kind of antithetical to the entire point of meditation, which is that it, as I said in issue 3, I believe, of Kaizen, it's the art of doing nothing. That's literally what meditation is. You're just doing nothing, sitting in the silence. There's different techniques you can use. You're focusing on the breath, or you're staring at a candle, or you're doing om and like
Mm.
focusing on like the vibrations throughout your body. Like there's tons of practices and techniques and
Repeating a
whatever,
chant, perhaps. Yeah.
mantras, stuff
Yeah.
like that. There's lots of varieties of meditation, but at their core, all of them are just doing nothing. That's all you're doing. You're sitting in silence, you're doing nothing.
They're
There isn't really a right or wrong way to do it.
right.
The only like wrong way to do it is to try to go into it with the intention of getting something out of it. Like, okay, I'm gonna do my 10 minutes of daily meditation so that my anxiety goes away. Like that's not gonna help you probably
Mm.
if you're doing it for or even
For
if
a
you're
purpose, and
yeah doing it for a purpose.
the purpose is going to be on your mind the moment you finish your meditation. You're going to say, well, is my anxiety still here or is it gone? So
Mm-hmm.
right off the bat, it's back.
Pretty
So
much in some form or another, yeah. So yeah, these that's the main thing with sitting in the silence, is that you want to sit in it, but you don't want to try to get anything out of it, basically, which seems weird for people who may not have any experience with meditation or mindfulness or anything like that. You're just sort of like, okay, so I just sit there and then just like let whatever thoughts come, and it's like, yeah, you can do that.
and so your article basically kind of expanded on that, but applied it to lots of other aspects of life, as opposed to just meditation, but in terms of like um, being able to just take boil away um, boil away expectations and goals and outcome and and just try to
Try to just be.
let the lessons that will come just be and come basically in their own time and place. So as opposed to just meditation, you're saying that that's the way you should approach lots of other, or maybe many other aspects of life as well, which is to try to let things be as they will be without
Yeah, let things happen.
trying to force them and figure it out, as you said.
Yeah. I mean, the phrase everything happens for a reason seems kind of like mystical,
Mm-hmm.
kind of confusing, like whose reason, what reason, maybe it's a bad reason, whatever. I think the everything is a teacher section of my
Yeah,
issue that I was talking about takes that idea and sort of flips it on its head, where it's like
you can learn something
everything
from.
happens for a reason, but the reason is what you can learn from it,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah. I was going to say that everything happens for a reason. Doesn't mean that it was right or wrong or it had to happen.
Yeah, there's no like moral implication of the
Yeah,
reason. It's just that that reason is for you to learn something from it.
yeah. There's a lesson to be learned from whatever ends up happening to you or with you
Yeah.
or even by you. Yeah. So.
Yeah, like, and the personal connection that I was having to that in the issue was like, I went on this walk with this girl. I had hopes about where it could go. I had ideas about what I thought could happen, which, are expectations, which by design create inevitable disappointment if they are not met or if they are not fulfilled in the sense of like, you're not expecting something to happen, but when you have a hope, if that hope isn't met, you will inevitably be disappointed in some fashion. It might not be an immense amount of disappointment or whatever, but like on this walk, it was a nice time. I enjoyed it. She enjoyed it. But, there were, it taught me things because it taught me mutual attraction doesn't equal compatibility. It taught me that even if I enjoy spending time with someone and we it feels like we have a good connection and I feel like I can be myself with them. I feel at peace when I'm around them. It can still just be a friendship. Or even like it taught me more things about compatibility because there was like some core differing beliefs around um, evolution and stuff. Like she was religious.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't believe in evolution, thought the earth was 6,000 years old. And like, I'm fine with someone having those beliefs. The issue arises when I am not sure how they came to those beliefs. And also, if they're okay with me having differing beliefs, as long as I'm okay with them having differing beliefs. Like, as
Mm-hmm.
long as they're not trying to change my mind and I'm not trying to change their mind, I think it's fine. Same with like political differences, politics, or even like other value misalignments. I think the core thing with values is like people always say, oh, your values need to match, your values need to align, whatever. That doesn't mean like every single value you have needs to be the exact same in order for the relationship to work. It just means that if you have differing values, you respect the fact that each of you have different values and you see how they are sort of complementary or you see how they can work together or you sort of accept the other person for having the values they have without trying to change them. So it's like basically you should have, which I guess is itself a value
Yeah, I
now that
mean,
I think about it. But that was another like major thing it taught me was just like um, just more lessons around like values and compatibility stuff in terms of
yeah, and sometimes it's
that.
not necessarily values, as it's just opinions. And some people
Yeah.
may not have actually even thought about how they came to the conclusions that they have, and
Hmm.
that means that their opinions may not even entirely be values driven. They may have just
Yeah, they might just
be
be.
be as they are. So
things
Not,
they've picked up from whatever.
yeah. Well, we all learn things from our parents, good things and bad things. We
Mm,
learn things from our teachers, good things and bad things, and
that too.
that may or may not have actually been a reflection of who we actually are as people. So,
Hmm. Well, I mean, yeah, opinions are just opinions.
right, but also
Most of them will
um,
change at some
there
point.
were a lot of. I mean, just to give a really obvious example, there were some pretty darn racist people that voted for Barack Obama, and they would say the most backward sounding thing about black people that you could imagine, but they didn't really mean it in a really negative way. That's just how they were taught when they were kids, and they never thought past, saying really negative, really, really negative words about black people. But they otherwise liked Barack Obama, and they were like, yeah, we're okay to vote for that guy. But they just said the stuff you'd hear them say was like, how can you hold these two thoughts in your head at once? But
Uh
because
huh.
they just hadn't, so it was. What I'm saying is that
They didn't even like
their values were good. I think they just, but they had
hadn't
these
self-analyzed at all
but they hadn't really analyzed themselves to realize that
where their ideas came from or
that
anything.
that no, it wasn't even an idea, but just just the language that they used was like such negative, so negative, right? But I'm just saying, like, people have
Dropping M
I'm just
bombs
saying,
like, yeah, I'm gonna vote for that guy.
yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah, it's exactly what I'm
That's
saying.
crazy.
But I'm just saying people are complicated things, and like
Oh yeah.
there's not any um, there's not any yeah. I'm just saying we should be careful about judging other people's values. I guess that's a strong term, and we have all things we all
Well, yeah,
things we find important. We have things we
I wasn't judging. It was
yeah. No,
just,
no, I'm not sorry.
yeah.
I'm not saying judging, but you know what I mean. Like yeah, we can, and yeah, and obviously somebody could have, I mean, very different opinions, and some things you can live with, some things not so much. If someone's a clean freak and the other person is a complete slob, living together might become challenging eventually over time. To pick a really simple example,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure if those even are values per se, or as they are tendencies, habits,
Behaviors.
bad habits, behaviors.
You could
But
probably tie them down to some sort of value. Like one person values orderliness, the other person values,
or one person values respect for the other person, right?
yeah, or
You know,
whatever.
for example,
I'm just trying to think of what the person who doesn't care about cleaning would value. They don't just value not that, basically value other things more
they,
than
they,
that.
they, they might spend their time sitting there with their thoughts, being omnipresent without worrying about the clutter around them. I
Yeah,
don't
they're
know.
just too meditatively enlightened to worry about simple cleaning.
Quite possibly.
But yeah,
Yeah.
that was the yeah, it was just like a realization. So that was basically the lesson that I took away from this like experience with this
Mm-hmm.
girl. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the everything is a teacher thing. And, everyone's gonna people will come into your life for all sorts of different reasons. So you shouldn't assume or expect to know why they're in your life, and just be open and curious and be willing to let whatever lesson meeting them or knowing them teaches you teach you. Like some people will turn out to be great friends, and you might end up learning tons of lessons about yourself and about them and whatever. Some people, they'll come into your life and you'll see them once or twice and you won't see them again, but there's always a lesson you can take away, and you could frame that as like there's a reason they came into your life or whatever. But I it's like the same thing basically.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Yeah, that's a great way to, which I guess is a roundabout way of saying you're talking about relationships now, but as far as framing the general topic of what you wrote about, which was Um, don't force. We should try not to force expectations or
Outcomes or
requirements or
yeah.
outcomes or conclusions on on certainly on your friendships and certainly on your relationships, but I'm trying to apply that to other aspects of life too, I would say.
Yeah. But yeah, just taking that mindset into dating has definitely been more of like a, I don't know, not like an unlock, but just a different way I've been approaching it where it's like, okay, I don't need to worry as much like about like I can just, talk to girls I'm interested in and have no like I can, imagine where things might go, but I don't need to let that imagination turn into like a, oh, we're gonna start talking and then we're gonna start dating and we're gonna get married and have kids and blah 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 and turn it into like this wild fantasy that goes off running away from me, where it's creating,
That's not very healthy. Yeah.
yeah, creating ideas and whatever. But just literally meeting people, if I'm interested in somebody, just talking to them and being totally okay with the fact that I have no idea what will happen, and uh, any possible number of outcomes could come from meeting this person. I might talk to them once, never see them again. I might talk to them a couple of times, and then never see them again. I might talk to them a few times, maybe we go on a first date, realize we don't like each other, never see them again. Might go, or maybe I'll see them occasionally or whatever, but like never like be in contact with them
You might realize they're compatible with somebody
in
else that
any
you,
sense.
hey, you'd be a good match for my friend so and so. Yeah.
Yeah, that
Or
too.
whatever. Yeah.
Like basically just being more open, because like to like whatever could happen. Because I think a lot of what drove initially what drove my anxiety with like dating and talking to girls I was attracted to and stuff was just insecurity, not being comfortable with, a lot of it was not being comfortable in my own skin and my body, but also not being comfortable with like not being confident in who I was and my own capabilities and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So then, of course, that made it obviously like really difficult to ask girls out or whatever. But then I think that was the initial hurdle. And then the hurdle beyond that was that I would only really talk to girls that I was attracted to when I wanted to ask them out or when I was like, planning on asking them out. So I would like talk to them and say hi and like get to know them a little bit before I would ask them out. Like I wouldn't just chat with girls I was attracted to with no expectation of anything was happening, or even like basically the way I see it now is I just try and talk with everyone.
Well,
I
ironically,
chat with the old dude at the gym. I chat
yeah.
with the 40-year-old lady at the gym who's, I'd like compliment her form on something or whatever, like, but not like to get anything out of it, just
Mm-hmm.
like, just because, which is kind of,
Just to put yourself out there a little bit.
but it's not from a place of forcing myself to
No,
do
yeah.
it.
No, I know.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. Like looking back, it's crazy that I've come to this point because I used to be so shy and like quote unquote introverted. And that's why I've had like a few videos recently where I'm talking about this idea that I don't think introverts really exist. Like maybe there's some people who are truly like, yes, they are truly introverted in the sense of like they don't gain social energy from social interaction or whatever. But I think a ton of people who call themselves introverts are just reserved and they're just, shy or insecure and they're just totally out of practice being social. But like I remember being that way
I remember being that way too.
and
And
seeing
people
myself
people wouldn't
now.
people wouldn't describe me as introverted now.
Yeah, I see.
It takes
Like
practice. I guess
it's
it's like a
weird,
muscle, I guess, right?
but I just think the label is such a cage people use to limit their own beliefs and limit their own capabilities. And it's like it's just not helpful. Like humans are so much more fluid than being X or Y. They're so much more like flexible and malleable than just being an introvert or an extrovert. And I think, yeah, I don't know, like if someone asked me if I was introverted or extroverted now, I would have no idea how to respond. because I would say, well, when I was younger, I thought I was an introvert. Uh, and now I wouldn't say I'm extroverted, but I definitely enjoy getting as much social connection throughout my day as I can. But I wouldn't say it's like, yeah, I don't know. Like, I wouldn't even know. Like, I would just say no. I'm not either, I guess. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just me.
Yeah.
It's yeah. It's curious to look back on just where I was and where I am now and be
Well,
like,
yeah. I
wow.
mean, many of us are extroverts with introverted tendencies, or vice versa, right? So it's
Hmm.
entirely possible if you want to put a label on it, right? And back to what you said before about we often experience a whole range of emotions all at depending upon time and place. In some situations, I might feel more reserved to actually go and talk to strangers. In some situations, I just
You just do it.
dive in and start
Yeah.
chatting up random people.
Yeah, because I think like even the most introverted people I know, they'll have at least probably one or two people in their life where if they're alone with that person,
Hmm.
they're like super lit up, they're super social,
Well, it's probably not. It's
outgoing,
probably an outlet to,
chatting or
yeah.
whatever. So yeah, I don't know.
No, but it's funny we mentioned
It's curious.
about having expectations with relationships. Ironically, um, I was I met my current girlfriend, um, uh, and when I was not in a place where I was even really ready for a relationship because I had just come out of my previous relationship, and so I wasn't even ready. So therefore,
You were like
I just
fully not
started
expecting
talking to
anything.
her. I had zero expectations and zero outcome hopes or whatever. I'd start talking to her without any sort of intent in mind, and so yeah, so I wasn't thinking about it. I wasn't even like conscious on my brain at the time. That, oh yeah, well, go and talk to her without trying to figure it out, or without trying to talk about some of the concepts that we've talked about, without trying to incorporate some of the concepts that we've talked about today and in your article. It was just the place where I was at anyways, because I was not even ready for a relationship. And then,
Hmm.
so it just naturally, that's how it unfolded. And so we started off very, um, not, yeah, started off very slow, I guess slowly, I guess is probably the way to put it. Slowly and without any expectations about where things are.
Low
And
pressure,
then
basically.
low pressure, exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And I came to like more and more things about her, and she said she likes things about me, and so it sort of naturally unfolded, and it didn't actually. It was not like planned, or it was definitely not planned, and absolutely not forced at all. So
Hmm.
it's
It was just easy.
been a yeah. I just sort of lucked out.
It's good to hear.
Mm-hmm. So
Yeah. When I was going through this sort of shift into trying to approach life in general, but dating and relationships as well, but more generally just life with no expectations and curiosity and openness. I was sort of like getting into this shift as I was talking to this girl and you know we planned the walk and stuff. So it was this weird, like I think I mentioned it in the issue. It was like this weird like schism kind of inside where I was like trying to have no expectations and be curious and be open. And when I was with her, I was, but then I would also, I had like hopes and with those hopes, expectations. And then like, when we would be texting or something, I would get into anxiety around like, oh, uh, all the stuff that comes with that of like
it's
how
hard it's
long
hard to avoid that.
before this
Yeah.
person texts and that person texts and whatever, and like what do these words mean and all that stuff. It
Well, and there's and
definitely I've had um it was not as bad as it has been many times previously,
hmm.
but
It can get worse
I
because then you
was
can see when they because
when
now
they
of course
read it.
I can see when they've read it, and they can just
If they
leave.
have the read
They,
receipts
they,
on,
they
yeah.
can leave you hanging on red, or if it's on WhatsApp, you can see the blue check marks and say, "Oh, they've read it," but then you don't actually get a response for
Yeah.
a torturously long time. Yeah, so
But
it's
then you're
hard.
just filling the
It's
void
easy to fall into that trap, and then you
with
feel
theories.
fill the void with all kinds of thoughts. And really, maybe they just happen to be in the gym or the sauna or the
You
hot
know,
tub,
they're at work or something,
they're at
like they're
work, or they're
busy,
in the
but
middle of a meeting, or so it could be any of those things, and
and theorizing is not helpful.
not because they're just trying to avoid you, or because they're trying to come up with some response, or it could be none of those things.
Yeah, and if they are playing games and like trying to time their texts and whatever, probably don't want to have anything to do with them anyway. So
Yeah, yeah,
if they're
it's
like, oh well, you know, I don't want to seem too antsy, so I'm going to wait 3 hours before I respond. Like that's stupid. Like you just you want to text, you reach out and you text. But anyways, so yeah, it was in this weird place where I was like making this sort of shift into having no expectations and being curious and open and stuff, but I wasn't like fully there yet. So it was like, uh, yeah, it was like internal tension.
So did this? So then this process of going through this recently, that helped you kind of really move more in that direction, I guess.
Yeah, it kind of grounded me in it more. It was like, wow, I really not need to, but like, I think going like truly not having any expectations at all um, is probably the way to go, which is, difficult when feelings get involved, but
Sure.
being like basically separating the fact of like accepting your feelings, but also uh, intellectually like not having expectations. So like, you can have the feelings of, oh, I'm interested in this person. They seem cool. I want to spend time with them. I enjoy spending time with them. Those are all feelings and those are valid. You're allowed to feel the feelings. But as soon as you turn it into imagination, you're like, I can see this going somewhere, or I hope they like me back, or whatever, whatever, whatever. Those aren't feelings. So you can notice them, but you don't have to give them the same weight that the emotions have, because the emotions are true. Whereas imagination those are just thoughts. So those are where the real like struggle comes from, because you can have these feelings and they're valid, and that if things don't work out, it can still be disappointing, but it's not as crushing as if you had blown things up in your head through imagining or having expectations or whatever. So if you try and go into it with no expectations, but still sitting with your, welcoming your feelings, then I think that's the balance that you can try and play, is to separate church and state a little bit in your mind and being like, is this a feeling or is this a thought? And if it's a feeling, it's allowed to be here and I can sit with it and it's totally valid. But if it's an imagination or a thought, it may be true, it may be false, but I don't need to grab onto it and let it control me or treat it as some sort of uh, verdict that I need to
Right. There's no
follow.
expression. Yeah, there's no expression that you don't have to believe everything you think.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what you're getting at, basically, which is that
Basically, yeah.
not everything has to. Not every emotion you have has to be set in stone, be a guiding light or guiding principle, or direction you have to go in. It can also just be
It could just be.
a completely understandable thought or emotion at the time, and no more than that.
Yeah, but I
It
would
doesn't have to be more. No more than
separate more between thoughts and emotions,
that.
because emotions I would take more seriously than thoughts, basically, because the thoughts are just thoughts. They might be true. They might like basically with thoughts. When I get them, I think, is this useful? And with emotions, I already know they're useful because they're a signal to something.
Yeah, so then you have to
So I
ask.
treat them seriously. I take them seriously, not literally. So yeah, you don't have to take the emotion completely as it is and be like, you know, this is the full truth and this is, uh, you know, you don't treat it as a verdict, but you treat it as a signal and you'd still take it seriously because it's signaling something important. Whereas a thought uh, could be useful, could be totally useless. So that's kind of like the deciding factor I have when I have something arise in my mind. I go, okay, emotion or thought? And then if it's an emotion, what is it signaling? And if it's a thought, is it useful? And if it isn't useful, just be like, bye bye.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't do that to emotions, which is, the challenge with like delineating is like you can't be like, oh, this emotion isn't useful to me right now. Get out of here, because then you're avoiding it and then it just comes back.
Fair enough.
But yeah,
Fair enough.
so that would be probably like my practical advice for trying not to figure things out. That's what works for me at least.
Exactly.
But yeah,
I think that's a good place to go. Yeah, I mean, a good place to a good.
good place to
I,
wrap up.
I mean, a good. I mean, I meant a good. I mean, a good send off message is what I meant. But I'm not saying you
Yeah,
have to.
something actionable
I'm
to
not saying
take
you have
people.
to wrap up, but that's probably a good place to.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good place to wrap up.
Yeah.
Enjoyed the conversation.
All right.
Thanks for sitting down with me today, and hope everyone got something out of it.
As do I.